Hey, welcome to another episode of geekoutdoors.com. On my continuing series on making the move from Windows or Mac over to Linux, today I'm going to be talking about troubleshooting in Linux and also the various logs that Linux uses, such as the system log. Now, if you have not seen my series, be sure to check that out in the description area below, where I show you how to do things such as install Linux within a VirtualBox. Okay, and so a lot of people, I think one of the big things that they're worried about when making the switch is actually running into problems and troubleshooting. And I could not blame them for that, because if you've never used any other platform besides Windows or Mac, it could be really intimidating, especially if you have heard of Linux and think it's super geeky and nerdy. Now, I will say that Linux, for many years, it was really for the hardcore technical people. But nowadays, I really feel Linux is much easier to use as a platform, and also when it comes to troubleshooting. So if you've been using Windows or Mac for a while, you're probably used to all the various ways in which you can troubleshoot, okay? And of course, since these operating systems are paid and they have a large ecosystem of support around it, it's normally, I would say, a lot easier for you to find help for platforms such as Windows or Mac, because of the fact that they have the whole business model around it. Okay. Now, in the whole Linux world, since it is a free and open source operating system, things are different, obviously, and you're going to have to learn different ways to troubleshoot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the main ways that I use to troubleshoot, and then also I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the various logs in Linux. Okay, so it's really simple nowadays to troubleshoot, in my opinion, for Linux. And there's really only two main places that I go. The first place is YouTube. I really feel for Linux troubleshooting, there is no better resource than YouTube. Okay, so just come here, type in your problem, and more than likely, somebody out there have probably faced this before and they have a potential solution for it. The second place is the actual forums themselves for the specific distro or version of Linux that you have. And these are amazing resources. And as a matter of fact, if you've been using Linux for a long time, this is usually the first place that you would go, but now that we have YouTube, it's my second place. Now, when you come here, as you see here, it really depends on the community around it. And so if it's a large community like Linux Mint, there's usually a lot of people here who will give you help in trying to solve your problem. And those are basically the two main places that I go for troubleshooting help. It's either on YouTube or the forum for the actual version of Linux that I'm using. And that's the main places. I really do not go anywhere else, nor do I really need to. Now, there are times if you cannot find an issue here, you definitely have to do a Google search, but most often I can usually find my solutions in those two areas. Now, when you come to the forum, this is where things could get technical, because a lot of times in order for people to help you, they need to know more about your system. And I would say more than 90% of the times, that usually means give them a copy of your log files. And that's where we're going to talk about Linux log files. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit more technical. However, you don't necessarily need to know all that whenever you need help right at the beginning. Okay, so what I'm talking about here is if you go to your folder, you go to file system, there's a folder called VAR and then log. This is where all your logs are stored for Linux. There's many types of logs, but I'm going to go over the most important ones. So the most important one is system log or syslog. You can easily just double click on it and it'll open it up. Really easy, And so there is also the very technical geeky way to see these same log files. So a lot of people who are new to Linux or are system administrators, they'll probably go to the command line and they'll do something like this. Okay, they'll go here, look at the logs that they want to see, type in the log, and see they'll be able to look at all the log files here. Or maybe depending on which logs they want to look at, they could do something like that, or even if they want to see the end of the file. Okay, so there's really many different ways in which you could see these log files. Okay, I like the simple approach, and going to the folder is really simple. You just double click on it to look at it. But I think a simpler way is actually looking at a tool, built-in tool for system logs. So if you come here to menu, go to administration, you also see this program right here, system log, and it'll come up with something like this. And this is an excellent tool. Here you could see the same things that you would if you were typing in a command. So this is the actual syslog. Okay, so if I were to go back here, and just a second ago I typed in this command to look at the last line in the syslog file, and if you come here, it matches. Okay, and so this is exactly the same file. And what's great about this particular tool is you could also look at it by different days as well. Some of them will have different days on here. And now these log files that are here, the system log is the most important, but there's also an xorg log file for all your display related stuff, your Windows. And then there's also a dpackage log, which shows you all the programs, packages that have been installed, updated, or removed. And then there's also an authorization log, which is basically security authorization and stuff. Okay, so most people will stick with the syslog, the system log. Okay, and so whenever you do go to these forums, people will ask you, hey, can I get an output of your system log? Okay, and all you would do, I would say, just come here to this particular system log tool, and you could either do this, select all, and then you could just copy this, or you could also highlight the part you want to copy, and then just copy that. Okay, and then you would just paste it in the form, and then you could go from there. And so those are the main ways that you could troubleshoot in Linux, and also a little bit of background on the various logs that are in Linux. But I would say the most important is the syslog. And so that is it. I mean, there really isn't much else besides you doing Google searches. But for the most part, once you get used to Linux, and then once you get used to troubleshooting in Linux, it just becomes really super easy. And then after a while, you really don't think about it anymore. It's kind of like natural. Whenever you run into problems, those are usually the main steps that you go through. And so if there are any other ways that you actually troubleshoot in Linux, be sure to leave that in the comments area below. And if you are the type of person who is maybe a system administrator or somebody who's more technical, I'd like to know some of your thoughts here as well. So as always, if you did enjoy these videos and you got value out of them, be sure to subscribe. And if you wanted to support my channel further, you could do that at patreon.com/Geek Outdoors. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com, and I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.